What's good, Fins Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and I'm here with the Jason Taylor to my Zach Thomas. Say what up to the people.
Fins Nation, what's good? Let's get it, baby. Let's get it.
What's good? We see y'all in the comments showing mad love already. We got a good one for you tonight, guys. We're going to go into the receiving core, but we're also going to discuss a little bit about the draft, the quarterback situation, the running back situation. We're going to cover a lot of it, but we're going to ask a lot of questions, especially about the receiving core going in, because tonight we got Dante Collinelli. He's the draft analyst and writer at bluechipscouting.com. You can also find him at dolphinstalk.com as one of the main contributors, main writers. You can also find him on the podcast Dolphins Brawl. And he is also a beat reporter for the Temple football team. So he does a lot of writing out there. He's one of the guys who was really close to Matt Hennessy, if y'all remember me telling you about that kid. So he's going to come on right now. And guys, everyone, please welcome Dante Collinelli. What's going on, Dante?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Happy to be here.
Happy to have you, brother. We appreciate you taking the time out of your Friday night to come on and, kind of educate and inform. We really appreciate that, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited. Love talking ball any chance I get, especially the Dolphins.
And you're perfect, man, because you do what you do, but you're also a Dolphins fan, so that makes you perfect. We can ask you all the questions that a lot of draft analysts wouldn't really dive into because they're not Dolphin fans like you, right? So it's perfect.
Yeah.
So before we get into everything, can you kind of just give everyone a background on what you do at Temple, and also just how you got into being a draft analyst and breaking down film, that part of the game?
Yeah, so basically for me, it just started as a hobby. I think I was born in 99, so I missed all the good Dan Marino years for the Miami Dolphins. So my entire life, the Dolphins have been quite bad. Mm-hmm. So for me, the draft was always something that I looked forward to. Every year, the Dolphins had, a high pick, it seemed like. So I was just doing more research on all the players. And eventually it just turned into something that I just thoroughly enjoyed. And I'm self-taught in everything that I do. I still have a lot to learn, but I just try and read as much content as humanly possible about football. I try to watch as much football as humanly possible and just try and learn. And I think that's kind of the best course of action. I hooked on with Blue Chip Scouting at the beginning of the 2019 draft cycle, and I hooked on with Dolphins Brawl just a couple of months ago, as well as Dolphins Talk. So it's really been a whirlwind these past couple of months, just kind of picking up new things to do and just trying to work really hard. And I just really enjoy it. I just love watching football and breaking down film.
What's the hardest position you found to break down?
Ooh, that's tough. It kind of comes down to I think an obvious answer is quarterback, right? Because when you're breaking down a quarterback, you have to be able to read the entire field like a quarterback would. If you want to get an optimal report. But then even scouting the offensive line is really difficult. There's a lot of nuance to that position and, hand placement and set points and techniques and different things and situational and, trying to read, is the lineman doing what he's supposed to do? Am I reading the play wrong? So there's a lot. And I think it also depends too on quality of film. As somebody who's, a quote Twitter scout or whatever, I don't always get all 22 of every player. I have to rely a lot on YouTube cut-ups and stuff, and those guys do awesome work. I appreciate the hell out of them. But, sometimes it's hard, in linemen's or, if you're scouting a safety and you have to use YouTube cut-ups and he's off the screen, before the play, and you kind of have to infer how much range he's actually covering and where he's coming from. So it really depends. I think the obvious answer is quarterback, but linemen can be really tricky too.
Mm-hmm. Anything you want to ask, Ian?
Yeah, I just, so is there any particular position that you is your favorite to evaluate?
Yeah, I think, obviously I said the linemen are tricky, but I really do like watching defensive tackles. I just think it's fun to see those big guys in the middle move like they do, especially nowadays, man. They're so quick, and it's just a lot of fun to see them, toss offensive linemen aside and make those big plays in the backfield. So I do really enjoy watching those guys move. It's a good time. Again, obviously, quarterback's a ton of fun. I think there's a stark difference between watching good quarterbacks is a lot of fun, but watching bad quarterbacks can be extremely frustrating. It can really make the the film grind to a halt. When I start getting into guys who I know I'm going to rank in the 6th or 7th round, man, it can be tough. I'm getting to that bottom of that list every year. But
Paging Shea Patterson.
Yeah, no, I didn't even give Patterson a draftable grade. So
Yeah, either did I.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
So,
I gave him the XFL grade, to be honest with you. Someone asked me in the comments what I thought about Shea Patterson, and I literally said to the person like XFL starter. So I'm not high on that kid, but continue on. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I mean, there's a lot of I like watching every position per se. I just think that quarterback's obviously the most exciting, especially you have guys like Burrow and Tua who are just absolutely fantastic at the position, and then defensive tackle is fun because I think it's a unique position. It's not the most valuable position in the world, but there's a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of just different things to look for. So I really enjoy that as well.
That would be a good. Well, that kind of leads me into my first 2 questions. If do you want me to go first, Reason, or you want to go first?
They're about the draft, right? Because we're going to start off about the draft.
Well, okay. Well, let's do that first. Okay,
yeah, I know you're jumping the gun already. I know where you're going.
Yeah. Because see, I'm with you, man. My favorite. I love trench play. So my favorite, position to really watch is the defensive line as well. So
it's a ton of fun.
We're definitely a lot in that. So. But yeah, go ahead, Reason. My bad.
So since you said you like the quarterback again. EM can vouch for it. A guy who I've been talking about months and months, not just recent weeks like Twitter, was Trey Lance. But when you go beyond Trey Lance, because I'm like you, brother, like me and EM, we break down film as a hobby. That's how this all started. We were just on another platform and we were kind of giving evaluations, our opinions, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I got to ask you, who do you think is going to be QB1 when they both, because this is a good question. I don't think anyone's asked this yet. Who do you think is going to be QB1 when they both declare? I don't know. I'm hoping you've watched them when it comes down to Jaden Daniels and Sam Howell.
I haven't watched Jaden Daniels yet. I've seen him out of the corner of my eye, obviously watching Brandon Ayuk.
Watch that Oregon game, brother.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a hell of an arm, I can tell you that. I mean, there's certainly no problem with arm talent. There's certainly no problem with athletic ability. Sam Howell, on the other hand, he's a player that not only have I seen out of the corner of my eye watching other players, but I've seen him live. So Temple played UNC in a bowl game in Annapolis, Maryland this year. So I had the pleasure to go down and cover that game, man. Sam Howell's impressive. He's really impressive, man. And the Temple defense is not – I know Temple's not a big-time school, but that is not a slouch defense. There are a lot of NFL players on that defense, and Sam Howell absolutely took them to school. So I was really, really impressed with him. His touch, his arm talent, athleticism, I thought he showed a ton of anticipation in that game. I mean, I don't know. I haven't done a deep dive on him. 2022 draft, I'll do that next summer, but – from what I've seen so far, I think Sam Howell's my guy right now. I just think he's so impressive.
He's what Bears fans wish Mitch Trubisky was, what they got from UNC, eh?
Yeah, I would say
he's unbelievable, bro. And actually, another kid I'm excited to watch this year, I don't know if you are, is Spencer Rattler. I want to see what he does. I want to see what he does when he takes the reins, because I, like you, my favorite position to scout or to watch film on is the quarterback position. So what were your thoughts on this year's Dolphins draft? And I know EM specifically wants to get an overall grade from you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a little bit skeptical at first, just given that, I don't know if anyone really expected to hear, Noah Igbenogany at pick 30. I think, Raekwon Davis at pick 56 was a little bit of a surprise. I was not an Austin Jackson fan pre-draft. But I will say, I think, obviously Tua is a home run at pick 5, right? Love that pick. I was a huge Tua guy. He would have been QB1 for me if he wasn't, injured. I think he's just a really franchise centerpiece at quarterback. So I think as long as Tua is good, the rest of the draft doesn't matter as much to me, quite frankly. I just think if you get a franchise quarterback, that kind of trumps everything. I like what they did on day 3, though. I thought there were good picks on day 3. I really like Jason Strowbridge from UNC. I really like Curtis Weaver from Boise State. I thought those were 2 really good players. And overall, I believe I gave the Dolphins a B- in my draft grades article that I released. I just think I have some trouble with some of the earlier picks. Some of them I've come around on, like Noah Igbenogany, kind of surprised me at first, but I did a whole write-up on him, a whole new film study. When you kind of put that pick in the context of the Dolphins defense, I actually really like it. So I definitely came around on that pick. Some other ones, not so much, but overall, I think they did a good job. They executed a plan. It was clear that they had a plan, and they executed that plan. They had prototypes at every position. They stuck to that. They invested in the trenches, which I loved. I thought they needed to do that, and they did. Maybe I disagree on a player here or there, but overall, I think they did a good job given the ammo that they had.
So I had Austin Jackson as my overall tackle. He was my tackle 10. But but my tackle list just ended up being this way. It was 5 left tackles and it was 5 right tackles. So technically, he was my left tackle 5 because I like Lucas Niang better. Like, there were guys I liked a lot better. And anyways, does it make you feel better though? Me and EM had talked about it a couple weeks ago, and then it actually came out yesterday. Does it make you feel better knowing though that Austin Jackson was a target at 18? Because Cesar Ruiz was the target at 26?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Obviously, I would have loved to see them pick up Ruiz in the first round. I think I mocked him to the Dolphins in my final mock draft at pick 26. So obviously, I was hoping for that. Again, I just think I had Austin Jackson in the 3rd round. I'll be frank. I think he's a developmental tackle with a lot of good traits, but also a lot of bad reps against good edge rushers that he's going to see. Bradley and I got him. He's a 5th round pick from the Cowboys. Bradley and I took him to school. AJ Epinesa is a 2nd round pick from to Buffalo from Iowa. He's going to probably see him possibly this season. And, Epinesa beat him up pretty good. And, there are some really not great reps.
Julian Aquara, right?
Aquara got him too. Yeah. So, I mean, you can go down the list. And, I just think that this is a player for me who I just cannot – there is no version of this where I can feel comfortable with him in the 1st round. There just isn't. I understand he has the traits and he's a great athlete. And I get those things and I'll give him credit for those things. I don't think he's going to be a bad player. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that taking him in the 1st round, when you could have gotten, I don't know, even Cesar Ruiz at 18, I think would have been a better pick, honestly. Possibly even Xavier McKinney. I know he went later in that draft, but I think Xavier McKinney's a great safety. So that was a tough pick for me to swallow.
Would you have taken Josh Jones or Lucas Niang before you would have taken Austin Jackson?
I have both of them ranked ahead of Jackson. I had Niang in my top 50. I really love Niang. His 2018 film was really good pre-injury. So assuming he's healthy, I think he'll be a steal for the Chiefs. I forget. I think he was a 3rd round pick for the Chiefs. So I really liked him.
Pounding the table for Dante. I was pounding the table for Luke. I said if you miss out on Wirfs or Jedrick Wills, you target Lucas Niang in that 2nd round, because if he's healthy, he has the potential to be a top 3 tackle in this draft. People just sleep on him because of the injury, man. So I'm right with you with the Austin Jackson thing, man. I get it, because I get they were going to do Cesar Ruiz. They're going to stabilize their interior with Ruiz at 26 and get that developmental guy at left tackle. I get that, but I don't know, man. To be honest with you, and I've said it to people, the jury is out for me on the Brandon Jones pick, and I would have much rather packaged that 18th with the 70th and moved up, and I would have got Wirfs, and I would have outbid the Buccaneers to go get Wirfs. That's just me, though. But I mean, they were obviously standing pat, so they got a plan.
Wow. Yeah, 3rd round on Austin Jackson. Wow.
Yeah, wow. I mean, a lot of technical stuff.
The majority grades I saw were 2nd round.
Yeah, I hear you. I get it. Yeah. I get it. I understand. I might be a little higher on Austin Jackson than you guys are, but I totally get the evaluation. You mentioned that you might not have been as high on the Raekwon Davis pick.
We're both high on him.
I'm high on him but just primarily because I think he's an ideal scheme fit in our defense, especially in our base defense. And So why weren't you you as high on that pick in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm not denying that Raekwon's a good scheme fit, or that even that he's going to be a good rotational D lineman for this team. I actually just wrote a piece on him today. It should come out tomorrow on DolphinsTalk.com. You can read it. But for me, it's that if you're going to take a defensive tackle, defensive end, defensive tackle, whatever you're going to call him, in an odd or an even front, he switches around all the time. I gotta draft a player with more pass rush upside than Raekwon Davis. This is a player who burst onto the scene in 2017, and he has not improved his pass rush ability since 2017. This is a player who is a raw athlete as a pass rusher, and he didn't leave college early. He's been a starter for 3 years, and he's someone that I've been watching for years because his 2017 season was so impactful. We thought he was going to come out last year. So I watched him last year until he decided to go back to school. So this is a player who, for me personally, just does not have the pass rush ceiling that is needed for the 56th pick. I'm not saying that he's going to be bad. I think he's a solid player, but you also have effort concerns, right? Like there are people that, I trust that have told me that we're not sure about his work ethic right now. And obviously the Dolphins know much more than I do. I'm not implying that I have some crazy inside sources or anything like that. I'm just saying that there are those whispers out there. There are those things, that people talk about. So again, I think Davis is a great run defender, and I think he's perfect for the scheme. He's got those heavy hands Brian Flores is always talking about. He's got that great length. I think he's super versatile. He can be an end and odd fronts and an inside presence and even fronts. I actually like him as a nose tackle too, as a zero tech. I think he can be really good there for Miami. So he brings a lot to the table. So it's less about the player itself and more about where he was picked that I have a problem with.
I've heard that. I've heard a lot of evaluations, from different, other people around the NFL, and that's very similar to what they were saying pre-draft and post-draft. What their evaluation of him was. But I'm personally, I love that pick. I think he's exactly what we need. Whether they play him in the middle, whether they play him at the 0 tech, 3, 5 tech. So I'm extremely high on him personally, but how do you feel about our current defensive line as a whole with the additions that we made in free agency and in particular in the draft? Well, you just covered Raekwon Davis in the draft, but how do you feel about our D-line now? How our current roster looks?
Yeah, I think it's much improved. I think this was one of the spots where I wanted the Dolphins to invest multiple assets into in both free agency and the draft, and that's something that they did. I think Emmanuel Ogbah is a really underrated pickup from the Chiefs.
We love that.
Yeah, that's my favorite pick. That's my favorite addition.
I think that was a really, really good signing, man. He's very, very productive. He's a good scheme fit. I really like that. I like the Shaq Lawson pickup as well as another versatile, good presence. Obviously, I think Christian Wilkins really started to come on at the end of last season. I thought he looked much better down the stretch than he did in the beginning. If he can kind of roll that momentum into this year, I think we could be looking at a pretty good defensive line. Obviously, you'd like to see, a little bit more of a dynamic pass rusher. But again, that's not almost what the defense calls for, right? This is a team defense. It's going to get team sacks. And I think the Dolphins are doing a really good job executing a plan up front with these players. So I really like the depth on the D-line. I really like a lot of the players on the D-line. I know I talked about, some flaws in Raekwon Davis's game, but like you said, he's going to be perfect for this scheme. If this is a place where he was going to go and he was going to hit that ceiling that people talk about, I think it's perfect that he gets to be coached up by Brian Flores. I think that that's a perfect spot for him. So I'm pretty high on our D-line. I think they did a really good job retooling it.
Absolutely.
What do you think about? Because another guy I've been high on, and EM can, I think since back in November, November is when I started dropping Curtis Weaver. A lot of our fan base was like, hey, if we miss out on Chase Young, let's go after AJ Epinesa. When AJ Epinesa had that top 15 ranking, back at that time, I was saying, pass on AJ Epinesa. You got a guy like Curtis Weaver that you can get later who's going to offer you the same things that AJ Epinesa can for what we want to do. What do you think about the Curtis Weaver pick? Could that end up being one of the steals of the draft?
Yeah, so that's actually my favorite pick from the draft, sans Tua Tagovailoa. I had Curtis Weaver as a top 50 player on my final board. I wrote an article about him, a feature article about him in November, and I highlighted him as a fit for the Patriot-style defense. At the time, I just listed New England, Detroit, Houston, and Miami. I had no idea he'd end up with the Dolphins, obviously. Yeah. So that was a dream come true for me in the 5th round. I just think that, again, and he's not an overly flashy player either, not an elite athlete, but a technician with his hands, pass rush moves. He wins inside, he wins outside. There are some concerns, right? There's a reason he was drafted in the 5th round, but I think that could be the steal of the draft. I really love what Curtis Weaver brings to the table, and he's a perfect scheme fit. I've been high on him for a long time. He tested much better than I thought he would at the combine as well. He had much better quickness scores than I was expecting. And when you're scouting edges, if people say the combine doesn't matter, the combine does matter for some positions. And, high athletic testing is heavily correlated with success in the NFL at the edge position. And Curtis Weaver checked a ton of boxes there. So I think that was a really, really good pick for the Dolphins in the 5th round.
Do you think, because I know one of the rumors why he slipped is because of his conditioning, right? And Flores, like me and EM have talked about privately and on stream, one of the things Flores really stressed when he came here was he wanted us to be one of the better conditioned teams in the NFL, right? And they really, look at Devontae Parker. He had his first fully healthy season, and me and EM credit the strength and conditioning that they've got going on. That being said, isn't this another perfect situation, like you said, for Raekwon Davis, but with Curtis Weaver, where he can get into a solid strength and conditioning program, lean out a bit, and he already wins with power and technique, like you stated. Man, if he sheds a little weight, he could be a serious problem right away.
Yeah, I think obviously that would be ideal. And you can see it on film sometimes. He's kind of lagging behind, and he's got a weird body type too. Like the way he's built is just odd. Like when you flip on the Boise State film, like he stands out immediately. I think that if the Dolphins can kind of mold him into a more prototypical looking edge rusher, I think obviously that's all for the better. And, that was, again, like you said, that was a big focus of what Brian Flores was talked about, when he was first hired. And he's going to have his work cut out for him with some of these rookies, given on what we've heard from people at those, coaching staffs. But I have all the faith in the world that they'll be able to whip these guys into shape.
And what's your thoughts on I got to get this out, because I know EM's just as interested as I am. What are your thoughts on the Brandon Jones pick?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I ranked Brandon Jones in like the 4th round. I just think that he's a strong safety, and that's what he is. He's an enforcer, a hard hitter. He's a good linear athlete too. I think he can come downhill, be a sub-package linebacker type player. That's kind of where I see him transitioning. Very, very not an overly versatile player. I don't love him in coverage. I didn't think he did a good job in coverage at Texas, whether that be deep zones, short zones, or man coverage. I think he's got enough athleticism to be good in man coverage, but his technique's all over the place. I don't want to trust him in that area early. The Dolphins coaching staff can coach him up to be, a tight end or racer. That would obviously be preferred. But again, I just think, he's a traditional strong safety. I get it. That's a Dolphins type player. They're going to use him in a lot of spots, a lot of different sub packages. I know this is, not something that people bring up a lot, but I think he'll be good on special teams too. If that's where he ends up early, I think he's a great athlete. He's a good tackler. That'll bring some value. And, Brian Flores strikes me as the type of coach who would want to see those things from his rookies, no matter what round he picks them in. So I'm fine with the Jones pick. It's a small reach against my board, but I get it. I just hope that they don't task him with doing things that, he's not good at doing. I don't want to see him as single high. He has no ball skills and no ability to play the ball in the air. And, that can be learned. But again, he'll get burned pretty quickly if they're going to throw him out in the deepest zones.
What did you think of? I know you mentioned Austin Jackson earlier about how you had a 3rd round grade on him. What did you think about the Robert Hunt pick?
I love that pick. I really do. It's small reach against my board, but again, not a big deal. This is a player who when they selected Robert Hunt, that for me was like, okay, I know what type of team the Dolphins want to be. They want to, they want to bully you, right? They want to wear you out in the South Florida heat, bring you into the 4th quarter, and then knock you out. And that's a perfect type of player that Robert Hunt is. His film's a ton of fun. Just pancaking dudes.
Bro, dude, I saw this rep against Appalachian State. The rep against Appalachian State where he chips the guard, goes to the second level, and blows the linebacker up.
Yeah.
Man. Like just tosses him like it's nothing. I was like,
Yeah.
holy.
He's violent.
Man.
Yeah, he's a ton of fun.
So
I
where
think,
do you
you
see
know,
him?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, but no, I was going to ask you, where do you see him what position do you see him best transitioning to, right tackle or right guard?
Yeah, so I ranked him as a guard. I think that he's a guard through and through. I wrote an article about it about a week ago on Dolphins Talk. You can check it out. I just don't see him as flexible or fleet of foot enough to be an NFL tackle. He might have gotten away with it in the Sun Belt Conference, and that's fine. But I don't think, you know, as a right tackle, you're going to see Von Miller and Myles Garrett and a lot of other really good pass rushers. So for me, I think he's a guard. If the Dolphins want to try him at tackle, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to sit here and say they shouldn't. You know, I don't love the tackle depth on this team right now, particularly. So if Hunt turns out to be a good tackle, then hey, I'm all for it. That'd be great. You know, that'd be a huge hit for this team if he turns out to be a good right tackle. But I think he's a guard. I really do. Obviously, there's no harm in playing him at right tackle at first, but for me, I think he's a plug and play guard in this power scheme that we're going to run, the power spread. So I don't know. I wouldn't mess with it personally, but I understand why they would give him a shot at right tackle.
So for you, does the Robert Hunt pick, which I, like you, loved, bro, like one of my favorite picks of this draft, and does that kind of nullify the need for a Larry Warford to you?
I think. Yeah, a little bit. I think that, you know, obviously I would not be opposed to them signing Larry Walford at all. I think he's a fantastic guard. Again, I would have significantly more faith in him than Eric Flowers, quite frankly. You know, I think Flowers is a fine player. He had a good year in Washington, but that was like by far the best he's played in his entire career. And, you know, law of means tells me he's probably not going to be as good as he was. Just given that, you know, that's just how it works for football players. So I think it helps. Obviously, you know, the Dolphins have a lot of dudes on the interior. I don't know how much confidence I have in a lot of them outside of Robert Hunt. You know, I wasn't a big fan of the Solomon Kinley pick, just given that I don't think he can pass block, quite frankly. I think he's a pure run blocker, but you know, I hope Michael Dieter has a bounce back season. I really liked him out of Wisconsin. I think Ted Karras is a good pickup in the middle as well. So there's a lot of dudes there. I just kind of hope that the Dolphins let them all compete. Let the best man win, whoever it may be. If it's a UDFA, if it's Dieter, if it's Hunt, like just let the guys compete. And I hope they do that at least.
Do you see Dieter? Because we're all in agreement that it appears to be that the Dolphins are transitioning to that gap power scheme. Do you see, based off Dieter's skill set, do you see him being an ideal fit either on the interior at left guard or right guard? Or maybe do you think he could his skill set is more fit for like the center position, which I think his skill set is more suited for at center. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say I think he might be a center. I liked him as a guard coming out. It's just he did not look like he had the requisite strength as a rookie, man. He just looked, you know, out-muscled, out-manned. And that, you know, that worries me going to a gap power scheme, right? Because in a gap power scheme, you're tasked with opening up holes as a lineman. You don't get to use movement like you do in a zone scheme to naturally open up those holes. And I'm sure they'll run some zone concepts. I just think that, you know, Dieter's got an uphill battle. He really does. And, you know, Eric, you know, you say what you want about Eric Flowers. He's powerful, right? Like he does have some strength to his game. He's always had that part of his game, even when he was on the Giants. It's just, you know, so Dieter needs to get stronger. I hope the coronavirus has allowed him to still work out, because I had really high hopes for him. He was one of my top guards coming out in 2019. I was very happy when the Dolphins drafted him. It's just, you know, that rookie year was really tough for him. He's got an uphill battle.
I'm totally in agreement with you 100%.
EM, can you just move your glass, because your camera's focusing on the glass and blurring you?
Oh, I'm sorry about that, bro. Cheers. Cheers, brother.
So obviously, who was your favorite pick? Was it Tua or was it Weaver?
Well, I mean, obviously it's Tua, right? Like I just think that's a gimme. So sans Tua for me, it's Weaver. I think, I just think he's a perfect scheme fit. I think he's a really good player. I love what he brings to the table, and obviously Tua's fantastic. I think the only red flag that you could have with him, I mean, honestly, is the injuries. Is his arm, like, does he have a cannon for an arm? No.
But he got zip. Hey, he's got zip. On those slants, he showed that zip, right?
No, I'm not saying that his arm strength is a problem at all. I don't think it's a problem at all, especially when you have the anticipation and touch that he does, right? So, like, he definitely checks the box, but I think he's going to be a good franchise quarterback. I really do. I just, I don't like to say any draft prospect's a sure thing. I've only done this for 4 years, but even that long, you see guys who you think are going to be really good bust all the time. I don't think that's going to be Tua. I really don't. I just think he's got a lot of really, really special traits in there, just a natural feel for the game at the quarterback position. So I think that one's the default favorite pick for any Dolphins fan.
You'd be surprised. So there's a big section that are still praying that Rosen wins out the starting job. I tell them good luck. Let us know when that happens.
Speaking of Josh Rosen, well, how do you feel about our quarterback room? Well, aside from Tua, everybody else on the roster with Fitzpatrick, Jake Ruddick, and then Josh Rosen.
Can I add this too before you give your answer, Dante? Yeah. My thing is not personal. I'm not a huge Josh Rosen fan. Haven't been since I watched him in UCLA. Okay, but my thing is, I think we should be moving on from him because this is twice that this has happened to him in terms of Kyler and now Tua. And it's just human nature. It's human nature you're going to be bitter. It's human nature you're going to have those negative vibrations and that negative energy towards the situation. And I don't want that in the room with my first-year quarterback. But anyways, go on about the quarterback room. That's where I stand with Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I'll address the Rosen thing first. I really liked him coming out of UCLA. I'll be honest, I missed, right? Like I liked Rosen coming out of UCLA. He was my top-rated quarterback in 2018. I thought he was a pocket passer with great touch, great accuracy. I really liked him, and I was a fan of when the Dolphins traded a second-round pick for him. And when they made the trade, for me, it was like, well, they might as well take a shot. We haven't had a good quarterback in 20 years. He was a top 10 pick. And again, I still liked him, even given the terrible rookie season that he had in Arizona. But I agree, it's past time to move on. This is not a player who, he's had his chance, right? Like he had his chance in Arizona. He had his chance last season, and he did nothing with it. And I think it's a shame, but it's time to move on. I agree. I think, he's got to be bitter. And honestly, I wouldn't blame him for being bitter. I think that there is a certain part of this that, he does have some of the blame, as any player should when they don't meet expectations, but it's not like he's been dealt a good hand either. I mean, this is a player who went to a lame duck coaching staff with a bad roster in Arizona. He had a million offensive coordinators in UCLA. Then he comes to Miami, and this team, sends everybody away right in his season, the tank for Tua season. And, he's supposed to come in and play his best football of his career. And, that's a tough situation for anybody, but it's past time to move on from Rosen. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick, for me, I think almost the direct opposite of Rosen in that he's like the perfect mentor that I would want for my quarterback. I just think he seems like such a good teammate and a locker room guy. And, for all his misgivings, he is a cerebral quarterback. He understands the game of football. I'm not a huge Fitzpatrick guy on the field, but I love him off the field, and given what he can help Tua do. I think a lot of Dolphins fans have a little bit of unrealistic expectations for Ryan Fitzpatrick this season. I can't remember the last time he strung 2 good seasons together, quite frankly. And again, I just think that he's a really good presence to have. I think this is the perfect situation for him where he can help Tua and he can still play out his last, years of his career. And so I like Ryan Fitzpatrick a lot. I think it's a really, really good situation that Miami has right now.
Do you think Josh Rosen's biggest competition is Jake Ruddick because he signed that futures contract and Rosen still thinks he's a number one guy while Ruddick's accepted the fact that he's a backup? Like You want the guy who's accepted his backup role as opposed to the guy who, yeah, you just drafted that kid, but I'm still the guy type of mentality. Like, I don't think Rosen, there's no way I think Rosen's accepted the fact that he's a backup at best in Miami. I just don't believe that, man, because he's probably got that competitive spirit, right? So do you think Ruddock, in terms of like that future contract to me in EM, it kind of screamed that, hey, that could be their number 3 next year behind Fitzpatrick and whoever they draft, and they could move on from Rosen. I mean, do you see that as a possibility?
It is a possibility. I think Josh Rosen's main competition is the rest of the roster. Honestly, like, he has to go out there and prove that Brian Flores should keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster, because not every team keeps 3 quarterbacks on the roster, right? And you cannot practice squad Josh Rosen. So, and you're not going to get anything for him in a trade either. I can guarantee that. At best, you're going to get a 7th round pick or a 6th round pick. So, Josh Rosen has to go out there, and not only is he competing against Rudock, who, I mean, obviously is not very good, and I think Josh Rosen's a better quarterback than Jake Rudock, but I think that Rosen has to prove that he deserves to be on the roster in general, right? Because, Miami could be sitting there and go, well, we could keep X amount of receivers and cut Josh Rosen, and we have better depth there. And it's like, well, if Ryan gets down and, we'll throw 2 in the game, So Josh has to prove that he deserves to be on the 53-man roster, right? Like, he has to convince Brian Flores to keep 3 quarterbacks, because he's the odd man out right now. They're not going to cut Ryan Fitzpatrick. They're, obviously they just drafted Tua. So his competition, honestly, is the roster, is really his competition.
Do you think Tua will get on the field at some point this year? And if you do, at what point do you think that'll be? What week do you think that'll be?
It's tough to narrow it down to a week. I do think Tua will see the field this season. I think that not a lot. I don't know if a lot of people agree with me on that. I've had some pushback on that. I just think the pressure will be too great. I mean, every time Ryan Fitzpatrick throws an interception, the fans are going to be clamoring for Tua. Every time the Dolphins score 10 points in a half, they're going to be chanting Tua's name at halftime. I just think that as long as he's healthy, I think that we shouldn't hold him back, quite frankly. I think that playing scared with your franchise quarterback is something that you shouldn't do as long as he's 100% healthy. I'm not saying if he's not healthy, I don't want to see him. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you should force him onto the field. But if you feel comfortable enough to put him on the field, right, then he's 100% healthy. He's your number 2 quarterback on game day. Put him on the field. And then so I think we'll see him this year, whether that's week 10 or week 16, or if they Patrick Mahomes this and it's week 17 and they're out of the playoffs, fine. But I really do think we'll see him this year. I don't like playing scared with my franchise quarterback. We had enough faith in him to draft him with the 5th overall pick, which means we must have been comfortable enough with his medicals, right? So the Dolphins cannot pull the, well, we're worried about long-term injury card. You drafted him at number 5 overall. If you were worried about long-term injury, you should not have done that. So they don't have that excuse. If he's healthy and Ryan Fitzpatrick is bad, I think we'll see Tua this season. I really do.
So my question to you then is, when it comes to Tua, and I mean, I'm in total agreement, because I think we can all on this little panel here agree that Brian Flores isn't putting Tua Tagovailoa on the field unless he is 100%. I mean, we can,
of course,
he's smart enough where he's not gonna ruin him, right? So let me ask you this. Because we know Chan Gailey, we've already heard the rumblings. I mean, and I was saying it before we drafted him. I'm telling people, don't sleep on Chan Gailey wanting Tua to run the RPO, okay? Because he's the best we've ever seen do it, in my opinion. So do you think, because of how heavily the RPO may be implemented throughout the course of training camp, that kind of works in favor for Tua looking the best? Because really, like, what they're going to be running is very similar to what Steve Sarkisian was running at Alabama this year from the looks of it, right? So the terminology and everything like that, it's going to be a pretty easy transition for Tua, I'm assuming. And we all know he's a smart kid, high football IQ, right? So do you see the way this offense is transitioning as advantage Tua in training camp?
I would say so. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's played in so many systems. He's played with Chan Gailey before, so obviously he'll know the system as well. But I think, when the Dolphins fired Chad O'Shea, right, that next offensive coordinator hire was all about the next quarterback, right? Like they were going to pick the offensive coordinator that was going to work best with whatever quarterback they are going to go with. And then obviously they might have not made that decision yet, but they went with somebody in Chan Gailey who has a ton of experience and a lot of schemes with a lot of quarterbacks. And it seems like they're going to bring a power run spread concept scheme this next season. And that's pretty much what Tua ran at Alabama, right? Like if you watch Alabama film, they run a lot of power, Josh Jacobs in 2019, Najee Harris last year, power running style. And then they run a lot of spread concepts, get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly into playmakers' hands. And we can kind of segue this into the conversation about receivers, get the ball into their hands quickly, let them go make a play. That's what Tua was good at, right? And he makes a ton of plays on his own. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but he works on time. Like you said, he's a fantastic thrower of the slant route. Like really, really good.
One of the best I've ever seen. One of the best I've ever seen at the collegiate level.
Yeah, it is really, really crazy. About just how good he is in that scheme, right? So hopefully the Dolphins try to do as much as Alabama tried to do and just get the ball out into playmakers' hands. Let Tua kind of delegate the offense. I don't think we'll see too many receivers on this team that are going to be like really target heavy. I think, and that'll work into his favor. I really do. And then, obviously we have, Jordan Howard and Matt Padilla are, really good 1-2 punch at running back, I think. So I think the whole offense is built for Tua to succeed, given what we saw at Alabama and given what we know about Chan Gailey. So I'm really excited about it, honestly. I think it's a really, really good fit.
So two things. One, I guess the hesitation for people like me and EM and a few others would be, we want to kind of see the O-line come together before we put Tua out there. That would be one. Give me your thoughts on that. But also, I have this running theory going, bro, and hear me out. With the additions of Kirk Merritt, even with Malcolm Perry, because if you look at his skill set, he could run the RPO. If Fitzpatrick is starting, you could throw in Malcolm Perry and use him like Taysom Hill, right? Okay, so you look at that. You look at Matt Cole. You look at Albert Wilson. You even look at Allen Hurns. Don't these guys kind of fit the profiles of what he was throwing to at Alabama as well? And so give me your thoughts on those two things.
Yeah, so the offensive line thing, obviously, yes, I'd prefer Tua to have a better offensive line before he comes in. I think that's, a given with any franchise quarterback that I just spent a top 5 pick on, right? So it's got nothing to do with the fact that Tua is injured. Like, I'd like to see the Dolphins have a better offensive line regardless. Obviously that would be preferred. But again, I don't want to play scared with my quarterback. If he's healthy, he's got to go out there. That's just kind of how I feel. And then given your theory on the wide receiver, I think that's really interesting. And, when you watch, the 4 main receivers from Alabama, we had 2 come out last year, Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy. And then we have 2 more coming out this year, and Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. Those are players who make plays with the ball in their hands, right? And I don't want to take anything away from them. They're not just manufactured touch guys, which is where I think Merritt is and Albert Wilson is. I think those guys are more like they're strictly manufactured touch players. The Alabama guys are much more complete receivers, but they have that element of their game, right, where you want to put the ball in their hands in the short yards, let them go make a play, and let them turn upfield, let them make guys miss. They're, kind of run those slant routes right from the slot, run those quick outs, those things, catch, swing passes, take reverses, those types of things. I think that, those players would be very good at. So I think that is an interesting theory. I think that there's some steam behind it, honestly, because those are the types of receivers that Tua had a lot of success with. And then you kind of hope that guys like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams kind of supplement the rest, right, and be those possession receivers that can make plays on 50-50 balls, make plays in the red zone, run that 15 dig route, right, on 3rd and 12 and catch that ball in coverage. So you kind of hope that you build, your basketball team of receivers. And I think that those guys, like you said, definitely serve a role similar to what we saw some of the Alabama guys do.
Mm-hmm. You got anything you want to add?
You mentioned Preston Williams and Devontae Parker.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. We mentioned Preston Williams and Devontae Parker. How do you feel about the rest of the wide receivers on the roster? The Allen Hurnses, the Mac Collinses of the world,
Isaiah Fords,
Jakeem Grant, Isaiah Fords, and Jakeem Grants of the world. How do you feel about them on our roster at this time?
I think each of those players serves a very specific role, right, in the offense. Allen Hurns is kind of a traditional slot player. He's going to run up in the slot. He's a good route runner. He's got pretty decent hands, and I think he's fine. I think he's a fine slot option. I think he's a solid player to have on the roster. Jakeem Grant's really frustrating, man, because he is a big play machine, but he seems incapable of putting it together, whether it be injury or drops.
Yeah,
it's just it's just really frustrating because he's very, very clearly a good athlete and very, very clearly an explosive player. But, he's had some bad luck, and, that's unfortunate. And then Mac Hollins is an interesting guy, another guy who's a really, really good athlete, right? Like, it's very, very clear on film that he's fast, he's quick, and he can jump and do these different things. I think he tested really well, when he came out of North Carolina. He was on the Eagles for a couple of years. He's a really good special teams player at a minimum, and I think that has some value at the back end of the depth chart. But he's another player who has not been able to stay healthy, and that's a shame because he's a good athlete, and I think he could provide the Dolphins some value. So I actually like what the Dolphins are doing at receiver. I really do. I think they've got a good overall group of guys who can make fill varied roles. They don't have too many big guys. They don't have too many small guys. They have some slots and they have some outside guys. So I like what they're doing. I really do. I think that Tua should have some pretty good weapons.
So let's go. Go ahead.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry, Reese.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Do you see any of our UDFAs actually taking somebody's roster?
That's what I was going to ask. Can you go?
Oh, okay.
Let's start with Kirk Merritt. Can you give everyone a breakdown of what you think of Kirk Merritt, and then we'll go into Matt Cole right after that.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I didn't see a ton of film on Kirk Merritt, just a couple of games. He comes from Arkansas State, so it's kind of tough to watch that film at times. But I think it's very clear right off the bat that this is a pure slot player. He's short, but he's stocky. He's good with the ball in his hands. I think he runs solid routes. I think he has solid hands. I think with Merritt, too, you've got to worry about some character concerns, right? This is a player who started out at Oregon, went to Texas A&M, went to community college, then ends up at Arkansas State. So this is a player who's bounced around a ton. But on the field, I think he fits what the Dolphins want to do, right? Get the ball out quick, run those slant routes, get the ball in his hand. It's going to be an uphill battle for any UDFA at receiver to, make this team, just given the amount of bodies that we have at the position, right? Guys returning, Isaiah Ford and Mac Hollins, and different things like that. So it'll be an uphill battle. But I think of the two, Merritt probably has the best shot, just given that, he seems like a player who's been productive for longer, over a longer period of time.
And what are your thoughts on Matt Cole?
Matt Cole's interesting. I think that he's probably competing less for a receiver spot and more for a kick returning spot. That was kind of his calling card at college. So Cole holds the all-time record at that college for kick return yards. So I think that's probably where he's going to be competing. So I'm assuming his main competition will be Jakeem Grant, right? So those are going to be two players who are going to be fighting it out for that kick return, punt return spot. Cole's interesting. He had a really non-productive junior season. He had like 22 catches for like 400 yards as a junior. And then he blew up as a senior, and he had, I think he had 900-ish yards, right, and like 12 touchdowns as a senior. So, late bloomer, I guess, So interesting player, but I think he's probably competing more for a special team spot than a receiver spot.
I wanted to ask you, before I forget, about Preston Williams. Coming into last year, the pre-draft process, where did you have him in terms of your evaluation going into last year's draft?
Yeah, I think I had like I'd have to check, but I think probably a 4th round grade for me from Preston Williams. I think that he had a ton of character concerns coming out, and obviously that's difficult for somebody on the outside like me to really evaluate. But I'll be honest, I wasn't overly impressed with his film either. I thought he struggled to separate. I didn't think he was a very good route runner either. And you know what? Again, I was wrong. That happens a lot in this business. You're wrong, and Preston definitely outperformed my expectations for him. And I think that was huge for Miami. And you got to hope that, he's healthy and right. And he comes back and he's just as good as he was before he went out, because I think he's a huge piece of this puzzle. He's a really, really valuable player given his contract situation, right? The Dolphins are not paying him a lot of money, and he was a very, very productive player. So I think that he's very, very important to this just overall group and kind of completing, the basketball opinion, that I had on this team. They have their tall guys, they have their small guys, and Preston's very important to that. So, his breakout, I think, was huge for this team.
Let me ask you this. Is it imperative that he gets back to pre-injury form because of the overnight depth we now have at this position?
Yeah, I think it is, right? Again, he is not a player who, obviously, he performed really well, right? But Brian Flores does not strike me as the type of guy where, if you come back and you're just not the same guy, that he's just going to hand you starting reps, or he's just going to hand you the starting job. So I think it is important for Preston to come back and prove early that last season wasn't a fluke. Again, and that could be a possibility, right? Like, this is a player who went undrafted for a reason. And I think it's great that the Dolphins hit on this player, but again, I am skeptical but optimistic about Preston Williams. I think that's the way that Dolphins fans should try to be about him. He does drop passes sometimes too. He's not perfect, but I think given where the Dolphins drafted him and what they're paying him, I think that's a good pick. But it is important that he comes back and puts to bed those thoughts of, maybe it was just 1 year, or, maybe, he was just a guy, so I think it'll be good for him to come back and prove that he's healthy early.
Devontae Parker had a breakout year last year. Do you think that was maybe an anomaly, or do you think that's a preview of what's to come? Do you think his best football is ahead of him?
I think his best football is ahead of him as long as he's healthy, right? Like, for me, it's never been a question of whether or not Devontae Parker had the talent to be a really good NFL wide receiver. He's always had that talent. He just was never able to stay on the field. There was some friction with the previous coaching staff that I'm sure attributed to some things in his play. But I don't know if Parker will be as dominant as we saw him be last year next season, just given that it's hard to hit that type of ceiling every single year. But I have no doubt that if he's healthy, he'll be a very, very good NFL receiver. I have no doubt of that. I don't think it was a fluke, because the problems with Devontae Parker were never about his ability, or at least in my opinion, they never were. I never doubted that Devontae Parker could be a really good receiver. It's just he was never able to stay on the field. And again, you guys talked about it earlier in the show. You attributed that to the strength and conditioning staff that Brian Flores brought in, and the kind of things that he was doing in training camp. And it seems like it worked. So I really hope that Devontae Parker, continues to stay on that track of being healthy, because he's an uber talented receiver, and a big part of this team's future.
So I know we talked about him a little bit briefly earlier, but what are your thoughts on Malcolm Perry? Like, do you see him being used as a gadget player? I said, because we're going heavy RPO. Do you see him in 4 or 5 receiver sets? I mean, I gave EM a stat earlier. He had the 4th most rushing touchdowns in the FBS since 2017 with 39. Sorry, the 5th most with 39. Do you see him lining up out of the backfield? Like, how do you think they're going to utilize Malcolm Perry? Because again, like Tashawn Render, the free agent we got, this is a player that the Patriots heavily scouted, and we kind of snatched him under Bill's nose. So what do you think about Malcolm Perry, and how do you see him fitting in overall?
Malcolm Perry is really interesting. He's a player that I've had a lot of exposure to, just given that I cover the American Conference, obviously, which encompasses Navy. So really, really explosive playmaker with the ball in his hands, but he's kind of a player where, I don't know if he's a running back. I don't know if he's a receiver. I know I like him with the ball in his hands. I just don't know how I want to get him the ball in his hands. He's really light, guys. Like, he does not have an NFL body right now. So I hope that he's in the gym too, working, because I'm actually afraid that if he takes a hit, like, he will just break. And then that's no disservice. That's no disservice to the kid. I'm sure he works hella hard. But obviously I think he needs to get NFL ready with his body. I think it's really interesting. Like you said, he could run the RPO. That is something that I think he could do. I kind of see him almost as a return specialist, honestly, if I'm going to be frank. I don't think we'll see him a ton. I don't think they're going to carve out a package for him. I'd be pretty surprised if they did that. It would be fun for sure. I'd love to see it. But I don't know if they'll do that. I think he'll be more of a slot receiver / return guy for me. And another thing that concerns me about him too is that he's a player who ran a really bad 40 time, given his skill set and given his weight. So this is a player who came in and he ran like, I think in the high 4.5s, right? And we were expecting him to run in the 4.4s. And, 4.5s is not he ran 4.6. Okay. So like I said, like that's concerning to me, right? As a scout, we're always doing, risk management. The less red flags the players have, the better. That's a red flag for me. A player who's as light as he is with the skill set that he has, I expect him to run faster. In fact, I need him to run faster because that's his game. So again, he looks faster than that on film. So I'm hoping that he actually is faster than that. Obviously, you weigh the, what he looks like on film is more important than what he ran at the combine. And I agree with that. But for me, I think Perry's fun, but I don't know how much of a future he really has with the Dolphins.
Yeah, it was the same thing. Like, to be honest with you, Rager and Jeff Gladney, they look faster on film than what they looked at the combine, right?
Yeah,
especially Gladney. I was expecting like low 4.3s with Gladney, right? Because I mean, that's his whole thing. His recovery speed on film is ridiculous. And I didn't. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. Some of these kids actually train for the 40, right? So the other guys just walk up and they go. But let's talk about, because our receiving core, the tight ends, obviously. What are your thoughts of Mike Gesicki?
Yeah, so I was a huge Mike Gesicki guy in 2018. He was T1 for me in 2018, right? Like, this is a player who I just viewed as a quintessential mismatch weapon, right? Like, he's too big for, shorter defenders, and he's too athletic for bigger defenders, right? Like, he's just a perfect mismatch weapon. And I was just so disappointed with the way he was deployed by the previous coaching staff. He was never a good blocker at Penn State, right? Like, it's not like he suddenly became a bad blocker when he gets to the NFL, which does happen to tight ends sometimes. That is a difficult position to transition from. It's one of the harder ones to transition from, actually. But Gesicki was never a good blocker. That is not something that he should have been asked to do. I think it took away from his value. So I really appreciated the way that Brian Flores and company used him last year. They let him be a receiver. They let him, box guys out and make plays at the catch point. This is a player with an insane vertical given his size. So I really like Mike Gesicki, in the role that he's supposed to have, right? He's not a complete tight end, but he was never going to be that player. And I think that that's okay, right? Like, this is we're going to the NFL now that is pass happy, spread happy. These types of tight ends are productive. They're good players. And that's where I see Mike Gesicki fitting in for the Dolphins. I think he's a mismatch weapon. And I really hope that, he continues to build on the success that he had in 2019, because I really liked him coming out of Penn State. And it was nice to see the coaching staff use him properly.
Do you think he's ever going to be a competent or a more than competent blocker?
Probably not. If I had to guess, just given his frame and his strength limitations, I'll give him credit. I did think that he was stronger last year than he was in 2018, which was good for him. But I don't know if he's going to be a competent blocker, maybe ever, quite frankly. That was never his game. He's always been a big receiver. That's always what he's going to be. But that does come with its limitations, right? Because when he's on the field, that is a dead giveaway to defenses that it's probably a pass. So that is something that, obviously is concerning in its own right. But I think if you use Gesicki to his strengths, I think the good will far outweigh the bad.
So what are your thoughts on the Michael Roberts signing? Like, do you think he's gonna? Because I know Durham Smythe, he's got hands of stone, but he's there to block. And last year he didn't really do but I mean, that's what he's expected to be a blocker, right? We don't ask him, we're not going to ask him to go have 50, 60 catches in a year, right? So What do you think of Michael Roberts being signed, and what are your thoughts of Durham Smythe? Because we ask him to be the blocking tight end. And last year, he didn't really deliver in that aspect of his game. So where do you see that tight end 2 battle kind of shaken out?
I based on what I've seen, I'm going to lean towards Michael Roberts being the tight end 2. I just think that he's a better player right now all around. I think he's a better pass catcher. I think he's a better blocker. I was not a fan of Durham Smythe when the Dolphins drafted him. I thought that was not a good draft pick. I did not understand that draft pick. I don't think he's played well since he's come into the league. I don't know what value he brings to the table that could not have been, you could have drafted someone that brings what he brings to the table in the 7th round, quite frankly. So for me, I would lean towards Michael Roberts. But again, Michael Roberts has not been healthy. And that's a reason why he's not on the Lions anymore. And that's a reason why he didn't stick on the Patriots. So again, Smythe just might end up getting it out of, Roberts can't stay healthy. But for me, I think Roberts is the better player. I'm not a Durham Smythe guy. I never have been. I don't like to dunk on guys. I just don't. I never understood that pick, and I don't think he's backed it up, really.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of, because we're talking about Penn State, I don't know if you've watched any of them yet. What are your thoughts on Pat Freiermuth?
I haven't done a deep dive on him. So just seeing him out of the corner of my eye, I think he's got great hands. I think he's a great athlete. He looks like a tight end, right? Like he's built like an NFL tight end. So I think, on a very, very surface level, I like him a good bit. I think he'll be one of the top tight end prospects. I'm working my way through summer scouting right now. I'm in the middle of the running back class. I just finished up quarterback. So I'll probably get to him in a couple weeks, but
is it Gainwell
right now?
Memphis?
Running back 1 is Kenneth Gainwell for me. Yeah, out of Memphis. I just think he's a truly dynamic player in both the run and pass game. I got a chance to see him live against Temple last season. He absolutely, just murdered that Temple defense. He ran through them like they were Swiss cheese, man. It was brutal watching that game. Temple won that game, but Gainwell absolutely tore them up. So again, I think that, Freiermuth looks like an NFL tight end, and I'm excited to watch him.
Matt Valladino has actually put me on to Gainwell because he wasn't even on my radar. He wasn't on my radar, and I watched a few of them. I was like, holy, this kid is explosive, man.
Yeah.
I was one of the people that, because I wasn't on to Gainwell yet, Etienne was my running back 1. And then I watched Gainwell, and I was like, whoa, I got to give this more consideration. So I'll keep diving into that running back class too. What are your thoughts in terms of sorry, let me bring this up right here. What are your thoughts in terms of how do you see, we talk about the receivers. How many receivers do you see us carrying? And give me your projection on who you think those, whether it's 5 or 6, 7, whatever receivers will be coming out of training camp.
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the obvious ones. I think Devontae Parker makes the team. I think Preston Williams makes the team. I would be really surprised to see Albert Wilson not make the team, just given that they could have cut him already and saved money. So I would be really surprised to see him not make the team. So I think those 3 right off the top to me stand out. I think Allen Hurns will probably make the team too. I think Flores will value his just solidness. He's not too flashy, but he's solid. I think Akeem Grant will make the team as well. And then I think, you're kind of going to have that battle between the Mac Collinses, Isaiah Fords of the world. Isaiah Ford just seems to stick every year, man. Like whether it's, the practice squad or if he's like the last dude on the roster, like he just seems to stick every year. So I don't know. I wouldn't bet against Isaiah Ford. I really wouldn't. I think that he just seems to make that team every year. So I don't know. I think we'll probably carry like 6 to 7 guys at receiver, which I think probably leaves the UDFAs standing on the outside. I would be surprised if those guys made the roster. I think they'd have to make a really big impact on special teams in the preseason games or in camp for them to make the roster. Same goes for Mac Hollins. I think he'd have to prove his weight on special teams to make the roster. And then also Miami signed Gary Jennings as well, who was a 4th-round pick from the Seahawks, I believe. I don't know. He might have gone back to Seattle. That was like a weird thing where like they claimed him and then he went back. But it's not really the point. The point is that there's a ton of depth at this receiver position, right? So I think if they carry 6 to 7 guys, that'll allow them to keep some of the guys that they took flyers on and kind of let the last couple guys battle it out and let the best man win. I think it'll be, I think outside of the top 3 guys for me, just, Albert Wilson, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, there's no guarantees for me. Like I don't think it's a guarantee that Akeem Grant or Alan Hearns make the team at all, but I just kind of expect them to, given their experience in the scheme and experience with the coaching staff. So that would be my guess. I'd be pretty surprised to see the UDFAs make it.
Well, speaking of UDFAs, we were able to we talked about D-line play earlier, but I meant to ask you about Benito Jones that we were able to pick up as an undrafted free agent. Where did you have him based on your evaluation? What grade did you have on him during the draft process?
Yeah, because Dante, we did a top 5 defensive tackle big board, but we did it strictly on scheme fit. Okay.
Okay.
Raekwon was our number 3 guy, and Benito was our number 6 guy. We were trying to decide between him and Raekwon Williams from Michigan State at 5. But Benito Jones was right on the cusp, and we named him in that draft big board draft show. So yeah, I mean, we're very interested to because this is a kid. We feel like between him and Raekwon, we got 2 kids in our top 10 scheme fits that me and EM had basically put together. So what are your thoughts on Benito?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting piece of context that you bring up, right, is scheme fit. So when I'm doing my big board where I watch somewhere between 200 and 250 players a year, scheme is not something that I take into consideration, right?
So I'm scouting. Video? That was our only big board that was scheme fit.
Yeah, so I don't take, right, like I'm scouting for all 32 teams, even though I'm a Dolphins fan. But so for me, Benito was a late day 3 to UDFA player, right? Like I was not overly impressed with his skills from a general standpoint. But like you said, when you add the context of, hey, what scheme is he going to go to? What team is he going to play for? Well, things change, right? Because again, he's got the heavy hands. He has the length. He does the things that Brian Flores wants defensive linemen to do. So I like that as a UDFA pickup. I'm glad that, that's the type of player that they're going to bring in. I think the more depth that you have in the trenches, the better. And there are some good flash plays on Benito's film. There are plays where you see him put it all together, the first step quickness, the hands, and he gets in there and he makes a nice play, whether it be a TFL or a sack. So I think he's certainly a player in our scheme, worth a flyer that could be taken. So I like that. I wasn't overly high on him. I didn't love him coming out, but again, when you add the context of where he's going and, who's going to be coaching him and the team and the scheme fit, I think it all kind of comes together for me. So I think that's a really, really good pickup for Miami. I really do.
And I mean, going back here on Albert Wilson for a second, when you look at the fact that he restructured his contract, they could have cut him and saved around $10 million. Because me and EM, again, we talked about this before. We saw at the end of the season, he started to get his legs back a little bit. And do you think they liked what they saw from when he came back enough to say, okay, we want to keep you around. We just don't want to keep you around at that price?
Yeah, I would say that that's a pretty safe thing to say. I mean, I would hope that's the reason they kept him around, right? Because if they're just keeping him around for the sake of keeping him around, well, then they should have cut him and saved $10 million. So I really hope that they saw what I think a lot of us saw and that he looked much better down the stretch than he did. And he had a really bad hip injury. That's not an easy injury to come back from, especially the type of player that Albert Wilson is. He's quick. He makes a lot of cuts. He's bendy, and that's a tough injury for him to come back from. So I really hope that Albert Wilson can get back to form because he can be probably the biggest benefactor of Tua at quarterback. Just given that get the ball into his hands quickly and let him go make a play. That's something Tua is extremely good at. I can almost picture him throwing that slant ball to Albert Wilson from the slot in my head already, man. Like, I'm ready. I can see it. So I really hope Albert is back to 100% because he's a playmaker. He really is. And, I like that they reduced his contract a little bit. I think that's good. I think that's smart. I just hope that he's healthy. As long as he's healthy, I think he's going to be a really solid contributor.
And what are your thoughts on a guy who might crack the roster, Donnell Stanley from South Carolina, who can play center, right guard, left guard, and he played in the SEC. I mean, and I saw grades where, as high as the third, fourth round on him. So what do you think about, it seems like they hit on a lot of the UDFAs on paper. What do you think about a guy like that who, when you look at all the UDFAs, he's got to be up there in terms of guys who can potentially crack the roster, especially because of our need for that backup center behind Karras, you know what I mean? So what do you see? And as well as we do, Flores likes guys offensively and defensively that can play multiple positions. So what do you think about a guy like that cracking this roster?
I mean, I think he's certainly got a chance, just given the uncertainty on the entire offensive line. Even the tackle spots are uncertain. Obviously, he won't play tackle, but again, it'll be up to him to prove to the coaching staff that he's valuable enough to keep on that 53-man roster. And like you said, when you can play both guard spots and when you can play center, well, inherently your value is higher than the guy that you have to teach center or teach the other guard spot. Right. So those things are invaluable to coaching staffs who are looking to fill out the back half of that 53-man roster. The more spots you can fill, the more valuable you are, obviously. And he seems like he's that type of player. So again, I think the Dolphins, like you said, did a really good job on paper with their UDFAs, right? Like you look at them, they make sense. I didn't watch all of them. I'm not going to lie, right? I can only watch so many players in a given draft cycle. But again, you go through, a lot of times, even with the Dolphins and with the Patriots and with the Lions and with the Texans, you can go through and check their measurables real quick and say, okay, that's a player who fits the scheme. It's honestly that simple sometimes, right? So I think that value and that depth on the offensive line is always something that, I think is really good. I think teams should invest in the trenches every year, whether that be in the draft or through free agency or through UDFAs. You should be taking flyers on those guys every year, because if you can hit on one of them, well, then you just saved yourself a ton of money for a couple of years. So I really like what Miami did there. Do
you see a guy like Jonathan Hubbard or even Nick Kaltmeyer, the two tackles we got? Do you see even them standing a chance? Because I know there's some people that are pretty high on Hubbard, right?
Yeah, I mean, Hubbard has some guys out there. I don't know. I was not a fan of him. I started to watch him, and honestly, I just didn't end up finishing his evaluation. I don't think he would have got a draftable grade from me. So I always try to pivot to guys that I think are at least going to get a draftable grade. That's kind of the thing it comes down to. I'm a one-man army, so I have to pick and choose sometimes, but. Again, I think the tackle position's so uncertain that it's not crazy to think that, hey, look, if they come into camp and they have a really good camp and they play well in the preseason, that they can't make this roster. I don't think Brian Flores is going to be the type of coach that's going to, hold it against them that they're a UDFA and Julian Davenport was traded for, Larry Tunsil. I don't think Brian Flores is going to care about that stuff. He's going to pick the best players. So if they come in and they have a good camp at tackle, then I'm all for it. Put him on the roster. I think that path will be difficult. I think that the staff probably likes Jesse Davis more than they should. So I think that he'll get a pretty good shot at that right tackle spot.
EM's a big
man. Everybody's killing Jesse, man. Come on, we need a little love for Jesse, bro. Just a little bit, man.
I get it though. Yeah, I mean, look, I think he's a solid guard. I don't like him at tackle. That's my thing. It's like I don't think he's a tackle. But again, Julian Davenport's not very good either. Obviously, Austin Jackson will have a tackle spot, but it would not surprise me if he comes in and he has a bad camp and he has a preseason. He has a bad preseason and they want to keep one of the younger guys on the roster. It's possible that, the offensive line is so fluid right now. I would say the only spot that's probably locked down is probably Ted Karras at center. I'd be really surprised to see him not play in week one, just given that he took a pay cut to come here. Because, I would assume Flowers would start too. I'd say it's probably like a 95% chance that Flowers is a week one starter as well, given that they paid him $20 million of guaranteed money. So I would say those spots are probably locked down, but I think the rest of the line's up for grabs, and there's going to be a ton of competition. And Brian Flores strikes me as the type of coach who's not going to discriminate based on draft position. He's going to give the best player who deserves the spot.
Have you okay, I got a draft question for next year, but I'll ask that in a bit. What's the most interesting battle to you in training camp? Is it what's going to be happening in the bottom three of the receiving core? Is it going to be the offensive line, especially the right side of that line in terms of the right guard, right tackle? Is it going to be Tua and Fitzpatrick? Is it going to be how Noah and Nick Needham shake out? Because me and EM are high on Nick Needham. What's is it going to be how the front three? Because we pretty much know how that linebacker core is going to shake out. Is it going to be the front three on the front seven? What's going to be the most interesting battle to you?
For me, it's that CB3 spot. I think that's going to be really, really fun, right? Because obviously Xavier Howard and Byron Jones are your starting outside corners. They might be the best duo in the league, if we're being honest. And I think that, Nick Needham had a really good rookie season, especially given that he's a UDFA from UTEP. He's not even from a big school. So, this is a player who came out. I did not watch Nick Needham, right? Like I had no pre-draft grade on him just because I didn't know that he was going to be a dude. And so that was a huge find for Miami. I think it'll be really interesting to see. And I think where Needham's at a little bit of a disadvantage to Noah Igbenogany is that Igbenogany does have a lot more experience than he does playing the slot. Right. So I think that'll be something that, Nick Needham might be at a disadvantage of. So, you might see something where, Howard and Jones start outside, Igbenogany's in the slot, and then Needham's kind of that CB3 on the outside, right? Like, he's kind of that outside or that CB4 type player. So I think that's going to be a really interesting battle. Those are two young players that I think are really, really good. And then another one I would highlight too is the safeties. As well. I'm not a huge Eric Rowe guy. I think he did a good job in his defined role last season, but again, I'm not as confident in him as some people are that he's going to be able to repeat that. That might have been the best that he played in coverage his entire career, if we're being honest, given, the PFF grades that I saw and the film that I watched. So I don't know how well he's going to be. I was not a fan of Bobby McCain at free safety. He did nothing to inspire me with confidence at that position. That's why I wanted the Dolphins to draft an Xavier McKinney, a Grant Delpit, and Antoine Winfield Jr. I was not a fan of the way that they covered deep zones last year. So the safety position is really interesting to me. Obviously, you throw Brandon Jones into the mix. You have some guys that are returning from last year. So the whole secondary, really, outside of Howard and Jones being starters, I'm really interested to see what the snap distribution looks like for those players.
So I got
you see.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, my bad, bro. Go ahead.
So, do you see? First of all, do you see Adrian Colbert legitimately competing for that free safety spot? And second of all, Noah Igbenogany. I like what I saw. I told DM when we drafted him, I was one of the people that wasn't surprised. We did a live stream on TD Finstock, and I literally called it before he made it because I know how high they were because I heard about it at the Auburn Pro Day. I heard coming out of the Auburn Pro Day that we spend more time with him than we did with Eric Brown. So one thing I've watched with him, though, is he's very handsy, bro. Like if you get separation, he's wrapping that body. Another thing I noticed, he doesn't turn his head before the ball gets there a lot. His ball instincts aren't that good at all. So do you think him playing in the slot primarily in press man, because he did have the second most press man snaps coming into this draft out of all draft eligible corners, do you think playing him in the press for a year in the slot will allow you to see if you can develop those ball skills? So if, for example, Xavier doesn't return to 2017 Pro Bowl form, this coach, he's not a Brian Flores guy, they don't like what they see. Could Noah, if he developed those ball skills, eventually be the guy that supplants Xavier as number 2?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation to have, and I think you did a really good job highlighting what Igbenogany's weaknesses are, right? Like when I wrote my piece on him and when I did my initial scouting report on him, the two things that bothered me the most is that this is a player who's a former wide receiver who cannot play the ball in the air. He doesn't get his head around. He's terrible at the catch and he's going to be a penalty machine if he plays the way that he did in college in the NFL. And those are the two things that really, really stuck out to me. Really, really grabby player. If you watch the Florida film when he was going up against Van Jefferson, Igbenogany had, a couple nice plays in that game, but I think for the most part, Van got the better of him. Van was toying with him at the line, and Van was a player I was super high on. I love Van Jefferson, but, Igbenogany, I think just a raw player, a ton of tools, everything's there that you could possibly ask for from a starting corner, given, speed, athleticism, length, all those different things. He has it. So it'll be on Flores to coach him up, and I have all the faith in the world given what he's already done with the secondary. And then to your Adrian Colbert comment, no, I hope not. Wow. I hope that we get to a point where Adrian Colbert does not get a legitimate chance to compete at safety. I just don't.
They extended him. They re-signed him.
I know. I really don't think that him competing for a safety spot is a sign of a good safety room, quite frankly. So I think he's fine maybe as a depth player and a special teams guy, whatever. But, I was really hoping they'd do something bigger at safety than what they did because, Eric Rowe's been injured his entire career. He just had a career year. I'm not completely confident that he's going to be as good as he was as a strong safety this season. Bobby McCain's been injured, and Bobby McCain's a significantly better slot corner than he is a free safety. And Brandon Jones is a strong safety. And I don't think he's a guy that I want ranging in the deep zones. So safety is a position of concern for me on this team. I really wish they would have done.
Dante, it didn't hurt me when I saw Xavier go off the board. It hurt me and EM when we've been high on Antoine Winfield for about 6-7 months. The other guy I was really high on, Dante, and I've been high, and EM can again attest to this, 6-7 months, because that's all I've been on YouTube for. Ashton Davis, bro. I wanted Ashton Davis. And then when we got Gerald Alexander and I saw him slipping, I was like, this is the perfect storm. And then Adam Gase had to come in and Dolphin fans life again. And you know what, Dante? I feel like Brandon Jones to an extent was, we got to take our next rated safety because they keep dropping like flies right now. You know what I mean? And man, I just but like even this, I wanted to say to you because I know you probably watched film on these guys. When I look at guys like Terrell Burgess is still there. When I see Kavon Wallace is still there, buddy. When I see Geno Stone is still there, I like those guys better than Brandon Jones personally. But I mean, was Brandon Jones the best safety on your board when they were at 70?
Oh, absolutely not. I had Terrell Burgess. Okay. I had Terrell Burgess rated above him. I think Terrell Burgess, for all of his flaws, I do think he's a deep zone safety that I like. And I think any safety who can play the ball in deep zones is inherently more valuable than any other type of safety. I know there's, Dolphins fans have a ton of hate for Minkah Fitzpatrick, but like he is the most valuable safety in the league when he's playing right, just given his ball skills and his range in deep zones. And Terrell Burgess has those ball skills and those deep zone skills to his game. He's not the complete player that Minkah Fitzpatrick is. I'm not making that comparison, but he has that valuable aspect of Minkah Fitzpatrick's game. So I would have liked to see them go with Terrell Burgess. I would have preferred Alohi Gilman if you were going to take a strong safety. I thought Alohi Gilman was a better option at strong safety than Brandon Jones was. I was not a big Geno Stone guy. I personally don't think he's an NFL athlete. I think I had like a 6th round grade on him. I think he's a smart player. I just don't think he's got enough juice to survive, quite frankly. But that, he's a smart player though. So in the Dolphins scheme at strong safety and a sub package, maybe he's a dude, I don't know. So the Brandon Jones pick did strike me as a bit of a panic pick. And bringing it back to Ashton Davis, I had Ashton Davis as like my 31st overall player in this class. Like I loved what Ashton Davis brought to the table, man. I thought he was really, really good in those deep zones. Like I was talking about, the valuable parts of playing safety. I thought he was great there. Hard hitter too, really, really good athlete. I loved what Ashton Davis brought to the table. And I was really, really sad when we didn't come away with him or Antoine Winfield Jr., man. Those were two guys that I was like, these are Miami Dolphins, man. Like they're what this coaching staff embodies. They play a position of need. We're going to be in the right draft position to take them. And it, just wasn't meant to be. And that's a shame. But those two hurt. Those two definitely hurt.
That's Dante, that sideline to sideline speed that Ashton has. Like, it's next level,
real
bro.
nice.
And anyone, I told all the Herbert lovers, brother. I told all the Herbert lovers. I said, if you're a Herbert lover, go watch the Cal game, because if Herbert's a top 10 pick, then Ashton Davis is a top 5 pick. Okay, because he was killing him out there, bro.
And that interception that he had, where he came off the receiver in the boundary and then made that INT in the middle of the field, that was nice, man. That was real good.
So I'm really high. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna add, because we're talking about safeties right now.
Go ahead.
So the guy I want next year, if our picker, that Houston pick, is top 15, I don't know if you've been able to watch him. Hopefully you have. Javon Holland. Have you had a chance to check him out?
I have not done a deep dive on him yet. I've seen him out of the corner of my eye watching like Troy Dye and some of the other Oregon players. From what I see, he looks like the next top 5 safety prospect, right? The Grant Delpit, Xavier McKinney's of the world. So he looks like that type of player. He certainly, again, of the clips I've seen, he seems like he has pretty good ball skills, seems like he's a pretty good athlete, seems like he's a smart player. But I have not done a deep dive on him yet. I probably won't get to safeties till like August, quite frankly.
I'm hitting you up in August because I want to know what you think about him.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm sure I'll be tweeting about it, especially if he's as good as everyone says he is. So the next safety class, just again, I haven't watched them yet, but given what I've heard from people that I trust, it seems like it's a pretty good class, right?
Yeah,
so
it's very good, bro.
Yeah, so that again, that's exciting for Miami, and I've always seen this as a 2-year rebuild at the minimum, right? Like I never expected them to fill every hole in 1 year. So if they pass the buck to safety next year and they still get a good player, then I'm certainly not going to be complaining.
Go ahead, Em.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Nick Needham. I was high on. I am huge, as the Dolphin fan base, I'm sure they know by now, I'm a huge Nick Needham fan. But knowing what we know about how number one in New England and also Brian Flores now in South Florida, how they like to convert cornerbacks to safety, in particular free safety. Could you see Nick Needham possibly could you see him making that conversion to free safety maybe this year?
Yeah, I mean, I could see them trying it for sure. I think they would be, Brian Flores seems like the type of guy where, they run so many multiple coverages that, I think the line in that scheme might even blur between corner and safety, given that, what type of coverages they want to run. I know it's primarily a man scheme there, right? Like they run like the most amount of man in the NFL, but he has better players now. So I think that might even change a little bit this season, just given that the talent has been risen in that room. So I would not be surprised at all. I could see it. I think it'd be a really great development for Miami if he can come in and be a free safety, man, because that's a huge hole in this team. And if you're paying a top 20, top 15 free safety, a UDFA contract, I think that's a huge home run for this team.
I agree 100%.
So a guy, because a lot of Dolphins fans, especially with that Texans pick, because we all know they're a Tunsil Watson injury away from that being a top 5 pick. A lot of Dolphins fans, and this is another thing I've been saying for months, and I want your backup on this, brother. So I'm hoping to watch tape on this kid, and I'm pretty sure you have. So everyone's been saying, hey, if we get that number one pick, trade back and get the assets. What I've been saying is hold and get Penei Sewell. And I've been saying for months and months that EM, I've been saying he's the best. He's arguably the best tackle I've ever seen on tape. Arguably the best tackle I've ever seen. What are your thoughts on Penei Sewell?
I mean, I have not done a full dive on him, but I've seen a ton of him. Obviously watching the hours that I did of Justin Herbert last year. I mean, this is a player who is just, I don't know if he's the best tackle I've ever seen. He might be. He's definitely the best athlete at tackle that I've ever seen. I mean, this man moves at his weight, and his size is just so impressive. There's a rep from last year's Pac-12 national championship game where he gets shed by a spin move. He spins back and puts the dude in the ground before he can sack Herbert. I think he got Bradley Anae in that. And it's just one of the most impressive reps that I've ever seen from an offensive lineman. I mean, this dude moves for his size. So I can't speak to his technique and where he sits on my overall, rankings. But I mean, just seeing him, watching Justin Herbert, watching some of the other Oregon players, watching the edges that he went up against. I mean, he murdered Bradley and I. Like he took his soul in that Pac-12 game. So I'm really high on Sewell. I'm really excited to get to him in probably about a week and a half. He really just looks like the total package of tackle. I think if Miami traded out of that pick, I'd be pissed. I would be pissed. I mean,
yeah, because you can throw him at right tackle, right? You can throw him at right tackle, right? Why not?
Man, he's good. If he's as good as I think he might be, I don't screw Austin Jackson, honestly. Like, play him at right tackle. Give me Sewell left tackle. I like if he is, the left tackle prospect that we think he is, I'm not playing politics with it. I'm plugging him in there at left tackle and I'm letting him go to work, So I hope that he's that guy. I'm very excited to watch him.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw when they were doing all the combine interviews, but when they interviewed Marlon Davidson from Auburn, him and Derek Brown said, first of all, because I've gotten into arguments with all these Herbert lovers, bro, and they always say, I always hear, oh, he didn't have what Tua had. Oh, he didn't have what Burrow had. And receiving-wise, I get that. But he had a way better offensive line than all those guys, if you're going to ask me. And what I say with Penei Sewell, bro, I shifting him to the right tackle is more so me wanting to protect Tua's blind side, right?
Okay. That's fair.
to kind of hold that off. But when, like, I've heard, I forget who it was. I think it was Mike Renner from PFF, and he said that he's the best tackle. That a lot of scouts are saying that he's the best tackle they've seen since Orlando Pace. Wow. So I mean, he's getting really high praise already at this level, right? And Marlon Davidson. What I was saying, Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown from Auburn. They said that Penei Sewell was the best, and they played all the SEC teams. They said he was the best player that they faced in last year, and that Oregon was the best line that they saw last year because of Penei Sewell, right? So I think the pressure's there. I think this is one kid that's actually going to live up to the hype, bro. And I think you're going to get a situation where teams aren't going to trade out for Lawrence, and I think you got a situation with the number 2 pick. They're not going to trade out of Penei Sewell unless it's a team that wants Justin Fields. So you said that have you dived into the quarterbacks for 2021 so far?
Yeah, no, I watched about 20 guys. I think I did the past 2 weeks. I ended up doing 20 guys.
So what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy?
Yeah, he ended up being my QB4, I think. I think he's super interesting just given that he's really, really fun to watch. He's got a ton of arm talent. He's got good mobility. He makes a ton of plays out of structure, and he throws from different angles, and he does a lot of fun things with the football. I think mechanically he's a hot mess. I think he's all over the place with mechanics. His accuracy can be come and go sometimes, but again, there's really, really impressive flashes of anticipation, of touch into tight windows and different things like that. So I liked Purdy a good bit. I don't think he'll be everyone's cup of tea, but I think if you have to project him a little bit, right? He was a sophomore last year. He's coming into his junior year, so he has some progressions that he needs to go through, and I need to see him improve. But I think right now, he's in a good position to be a top 5 quarterback as long as he stays on the track that he's on.
And just last question on the quarterbacks. Have you had a chance, because I've been high on this kid since Wake Forest, have you had a chance to watch Jamie Newman? And if so, what are you expecting this year since he transferred portal to Georgia? Because I've been hyping him up to Dolphin fans for a while now. What are your thoughts on him if you've watched any Newman tape?
Yeah, I did watch him. He ended up I think he was QB6 for me, so he just missed my top 5. I think with Newman, it's tough, right? Because the Wake Forest offense is so weird. I don't know how many of those things that he does in that offense are translatable to the NFL. I would wager that maybe you got to throw out 80% of that offense, right, that he's in. But you cannot deny the natural talent this guy has, right? Like he's got a really nice arm. You know, he's got a cannon attached to his shoulder, and he throws a nice deep ball. He's an experienced deep ball thrower, which I appreciate, because there are some quarterbacks who just don't throw the deep ball that much. And, you know, I got to give Jamie Newman credit. He's willing to test those deep throws. And I think that's a trait that's important for, you know, signal callers to have. It's a trait that I really appreciated with Jordan Love last year as well. You know, and Newman control his own arm or overthrows, you know, just, you know, plays that he should not be trying to make. You know, I think he's got too much trust in his arm, and he's got no touch. He's got to develop some type of touch. Everything's a fastball with Jamie Newman. But the talent's there, right? It's undeniable. There is a franchise quarterback in there somewhere, you know, but he's got to develop. So it'll be really interesting to see him go to Georgia, because I could not think of a more different offense for him to go to, assuming they don't change anything, than what he did at Wake Forest to what he's going to be asked to do at Georgia. I could not think of a more different place.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to ask him? There he goes. So who's your QB5 in between Purdy and Newman?
I had Tanner Morgan from Minnesota, which I was not expecting at all, right? Like, I watched Tyler Johnson. I was like, Morgan kid's like fine. But, you know, when I really watched him, I really developed an appreciation for his game. I thought he had, you know, really, really good anticipation. I thought he was very, very accurate from about 25 yards and in. I thought he ran the offense really well. I thought he had good placement. Thought he was accurate. I thought he was, you know, a bit of a better mover than I gave him credit for. I don't think he has a particularly high ceiling. I think he struggled under pressure a lot. But, you know, I think he does a lot of good things. I really do. So I kind of came away with more of an appreciation for his game than I was expecting, you know, but again, it's the summer, you know, things are going to change. You know, if he stays the way he is, I don't think he'll be QB5, you know, coming around to the draft, given that I expect some guys below him to take a step up this year. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't know how much I feel confident in his upside.
So one of my man crushes in this draft for late round guys was Tyler Johnson. And you just mentioned him. What were your thoughts of him? Because, dude, when I watched that guy in the red zone, but yeah. I mean, what were your thoughts on Tyler Johnson?
Yeah, so I think I had a 3rd round grade on Tyler. I think he's a good slot receiver. I think he's good with the ball in his hands. He makes plays. You know, I think he's got pretty good route running chops. I don't think his route running tree is particularly diverse, but I thought the routes that he did run consistently, I thought he ran them well. I thought he was quick in short spaces and a decent separator. You know, I think there was a lot of hyperbole thrown around with Tyler Johnson. I think, you know, Minnesota fans got up in their feelings a little bit too much about him, and, you know, they tried to make him better than he was. And then I think some people were too low on him too. Frankly, I think they got too, you know, much on the other side of the, you know, oh, he's got character concerns and, oh, he drops the ball and stuff like that. So I kind of came down more towards the middle of those two groups. I understand that, you know, his pre-draft process was weird. Like, you know, you should be competing in the Shrine Game. You should have ran at the combine, you know, when your biggest question is long speed, right? Like, if that's your biggest question, I don't think you should be passing up times to run. I get it, but I think he's a solid player. I really do. I liked his film a good bit. I believe he ranked inside my top 100, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was in my 90 to 95 range. So I think he's a solid player. Makes a lot of really flashy catches on film, you know, given his drops. I mean, there are some really impressive ones where, you know, where he goes up top and he makes a really nice play. So if he can straighten that out, I think that, you know, he'll be someone that, you know, will surprise some people in Tampa Bay.
They did. They had a pretty good draft, eh? When they talk about
they did.
Who was your highest graded draft?
Oh, geez. I think it was the Cowboys. Maybe I think came out number 1 for me. There was a ton of teams that were tied. I really like the Browns draft. I like the Giants draft. The Cowboys were up there.
You think we would have?
There's like one more.
You think we would have took CD if he was there at 18?
I hope so. I hope we would have. I think, you know, he was a top 10 player for me. So that's straight BPA. I'd hope we take CeeDee Lamb in that situation. I would have been very upset if they would have passed on him. But I think that, obviously I was kind of hoping that Dallas would. I really didn't think Dallas was going to take him either, but what are you going to do?
Do you think Trey Lance has a chance at supplanting Justin Fields for that number 2 quarterback coming into this draft?
Well, here's the funny part. He's already supplanted Justin Fields for me.
He has on me too. But I know everyone saw Justin Fields pretty much, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of pushback for that. I like Justin Fields. I don't want to make it sound like I don't think Justin Fields is a good quarterback prospect. I do think Justin Fields is a good quarterback prospect. I just think that, given what we saw from Trey Lance last season, I mean, wow, there are some really, really impressive downfield throws on his film. NFL throws, touch, accuracy, placement in the bucket. He's got a nice fastball too. I really, really love what I saw about Trey Lance. Really good athlete too. He's got a long way to go though. Still, right? Like the North Dakota offense is really, really simple. It doesn't ask him to make a ton of reads. His placement is good, not great. I think he can improve in that area. But for me personally, I think Trey Lance is a much better quarterback than Justin Fields. There is a gap between them on my board, and obviously my board is not very big right now, given that I've only watched like 30 players. But for me, Trey Lance is like a mid first round player, fringe top 10, top 15 guy. Justin Fields is a second rounder to me. I think that he's a second round quarterback prospect. There are things that he needs to do against pressure better. And honestly, his film is just like, sometimes it's just kind of like meh. He doesn't make a ton of really difficult throws. He doesn't throw with anticipation a ton. I think there's a lot of scripted throws in the offense for, in that Ohio State offense. I had similar problems with Dwayne Haskins too. I think Justin Fields is better than Dwayne Haskins. I really do. And I think Justin Fields is a good quarterback prospect. But for me, it's Trey Lance and Trevor Lawrence above the pack. So
you talked earlier about guys you think that might come up in terms of like supplanting a guy like Tanner Morgan. Are you talking about like guys like Kyle Trask, Hendon Hooker, like who do you see kind of maybe sneaking up into that top 5 or on the cusp of that top 5 by the end of the season?
Yeah, I didn't watch Hendon Hooker. I'd be really surprised to see him come out, just given that, he's would be only a 2-year starter. I think he'll stay, but he could honestly. So for me, my next couple of guys were Kyle Trask, Jamie Newman, Shane Buechele from SMU, and then Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati were some of the guys that I think have a really, really good chance to take a jump and play and maybe supplant Tanner Morgan if he doesn't, keep improving himself. Kyle Trask and Desmond Ridder might be the two that I would highlight as guys that I really like a lot in their, Trask is a really, really smart player. He's a really, really smart quarterback. I love that he's a gamer, man. He did a lot of really good things for that Florida team last year. And then Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, if you haven't watched him yet, I'd highly recommend it. He has a really, really nice arm. He's just not accurate, man. Like his placement is rough sometimes. There are some rough reps on his film, but there's also those reps that will get you out of your chair. Where he drops the ball in a bucket 50 yards down the field, and you go, like, whoa. So there's a lot of intrigue with this quarterback class. I don't particularly love it though. I actually I think I'll prefer next year's class unless some of these guys take a big jump in play. But obviously at the top, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, they're fantastic. After that, I think really you could make an argument that everyone that I ranked from like 4 to 10 could end up anywhere between 4 and 10. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are just really, really close to each other. A lot of guys who need to take a big step forward this season. So it'll be really interesting to see how the rest of that class shakes out, because I'm sure we'll see a surprise player, bust onto the scene. It seems like it happens every year now. Last year was Joe Burrow. Before that was Kyler Murray. Before that it was Baker. So it seems like that happens every year now. I don't know who it's going to be this year. I couldn't tell you, but I really, really hope that some of these guys just take a step forward, because it could make for a really good class.
And just before we let you out of here, because you've been so good and so kind to give almost 2 hours, do you think two things? One, do you think this wide receiver class coming out this year, about to come out, do you think people are right in what they're saying, that it's deeper than this year's class so far from what you've seen? And two, who's your wide receiver 1?
Yeah, I haven't started wide receivers yet, but based on what I've seen, I think obviously for me, I think it'll be probably a battle between like 4 guys right now. And when I get more into the weeds, I'll have a better idea. But like my top 4, just preliminary: Jamar Chase from LSU, Devontae Smith from Alabama, Jalen Waddle from Alabama, and Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. Oh, and Rondale Moore from Purdue. There you go. I'm just rattling off names because there's so many, right? So.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think that I don't know if this class is deeper than last year's class. It's tough to tell right now. If all the juniors declare, right, like all the guys come out that we think could come out, I mean, it might be. We might have 2 historic wide receiver classes right in a row, man. And this is a class where I have guys that I have like 30 players flagged on my summer scouting list, which is just unheard of for me. Usually I try to keep it between like 20 to 22 players. So I really could see it. There's a ton of talent. These guys flash on film. Obviously Jamar Chase was fantastic when I was watching Joe Burrow, and Devontae Smith was great when I was watching Tua, and Rondale Moore. Anytime you watch anyone play Purdue, you notice Rondale Moore immediately. Same thing with Rashad Bateman in Minnesota. He's a really good player. So there's a ton of guys this year, man. I'm really excited. I really can't wait to start watching them.
Do you think we can take a receiver this year?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. Look, I'm a huge BPA guy, right? Like if they're the best player on the board, draft them. I'm all for it. I don't think you can ever have enough talent. I'd really love to see Jalen Waddle be a Miami Dolphin, just given he's the perfect complement to Preston Williams and Devontae Parker. You slot him right in that slot position, and I think you're cooking with grease right there. So, again, I would like to see the Dolphins, if they're sitting there at whatever pick that might be, and it's Jalen Waddle or if it's Devontae Smith or whatever, like I'd love to see them make that pick. If that's the best pick, I think they should definitely pull the trigger, get to as many weapons as possible, and it's the bonus points for weapons that he's comfortable with already.
Anything else you want to add, EM?
Man, I'm sorry, fellas. I've got this like end of the world type storm going on, man. My power is like going in and out. So, but I wanted to ask you, I don't know if we covered it in depth, but we kind of touched on Howard and Breida, the additions to our running back room. I just wanted to ask you overall, how comfortable are you with our running back room going into the season, going at least into training camp?
Yeah, so the running back room is interesting. I think a lot of Dolphins Twitter was like kind of upset that the Dolphins weren't drafting a running back there for a while, right? Like everybody was like, draft DeAndre Swift, all this. J.K. Dobbins was like the big thing. Like people were pissed that they didn't draft J.K. Dobbins. And, I'm a big proponent of running backs don't matter. I will lead that bandwagon until the day I die. So honestly, I love the Dolphins running back room. I think it's really great. You're paying Jordan Howard not that much money. He's a really, really good power back. I think he's a solid football player. And then you trade a 5th-round pick for Matt Breida, who's on a really, really good contract, and he complements Jordan Howard perfectly, right? So like I love that 1-2 punch. I think that's perfect thunder and lightning. You're not investing a ton of money in that room. I really think it's good. I think it's solid, right? And, those 2 players should be significantly more productive than what we saw last year, given the bar's the floor anyway. But the rest of the room's interesting too. Patrick Laird showed some signs of life at the end of last season, so maybe he's a rotational guy. Same with Myles Gaskin. Kalen Ballage is terrible. I don't like him.
I love it. I'm on board.
Yeah,
I'm with you right now. Don't worry.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Kalen Ballage is not good. I hope he doesn't make the roster. I will be. I shouldn't care. It really doesn't matter. But I will be upset if he makes the roster because he shouldn't be on the roster.
Wow.
And then, so I like the running back room. I like that they are taking, the right approach to this, running back by committee and playing. Paying guys a short amount of money and just kind of, rolling with the punches, trying to get production out of players who, should be just mildly productive. I really appreciate that about what they're doing, and I like J.K. Dobbins. I like DeAndre Swift. I like Jonathan Taylor. They were good prospects, but, I have no problem with the Dolphins waiting to the 5th round to address running back, and trade that draft pick for Matt Breida and sign Jordan Howard to, you know, a 2-year, $10 million contract or whatever it was. I think it's smart.
Yeah, because I'm one of those guys where when I saw him putting up 1.7 yards per carry, I started wondering where these hands were everyone was telling me about, because he was dropping everything that was coming his way, because I think it was a point where he was overthinking it, and I think he was seeing shadows coming his way, man. I mean, people sold me on this guy's hands. Not only was he putting up 1.7 yards per carry, he couldn't catch a cold for the most of the part. So
I get it, but I will say this: you can't teach, 235 pounds, 6'2", 4.4 speed. You can't teach that. So I'm willing to give Kalen Ballage. I get
run a marathon, Kalen.
I get that he struggled. I mean, mightily last year. I get that, but I just think if our O-line improves, I think, because he's a downhill one cut type runner. You know what I mean? And I think this power scheme fits his skill set, I think. So I think, is he going to be Saquon Barkley? Maybe not, but I think we'll definitely see if he makes it to the 53-man roster. I think we'll see we'll see a significant improvement in what we saw last year. But again, that's not saying much. It's not saying much. But,
yeah, the bar is really the floor with Ballage. I mean, if he rushes for like 3.1 yards per carry, I mean that's double of what he did last year, right? So I don't know.
Killing Kalen, man. You're killing him, bro. Killing him. I hear you. I get it. It's a justified criticism, though. It really is.
Before we actually let you go, Dante, one hot topic, because we've been on the side of spend money on Warford. Logan Ryan isn't in need. The Logan Ryan situation that's going on, and there's still a little sect of people. They're looking away from the fact that he gave up 80 receptions. He gave up 12.3 yards per reception. He gave up one of those things that scares me the most, 1.24 average yards of separation, allowed a quarterback rating of 106.9, and gave up 5 touchdowns. Everyone seems to have like amnesia when it comes to the advanced statistics, and there's a little group that's okay with paying him, and it came out today. It was announced from Armando that he's asking for more than $10 million a year. Do you think we're on the side of the fence that say no? That's a hard pass. Where are you sitting on the whole Logan Ryan thing right now?
I mean, if he's asking for $10 million a year, he can take a hike. I mean, that's especially given the cornerback room that the Dolphins already have. I really think that they don't need to be spending $10 million on Logan Ryan. And in any universe, if he's willing to take a more acceptable contract, I would say something closer to $3-4 million a year or something. I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. Maybe I would consider it. But for me, I think this is a team I'd rather see the young kids play anyway. I usually err on that side. I'd rather see Igbenogany take his bruises early. I'd rather see Nick Needham take his bruises. I'd rather see that than Logan Ryan come in and we pay him $10 million, which is outrageous, and have him come in and play bad anyway, right? So, I think you did a nice job kind of highlighting those advanced statistics. I didn't know that. So, even if he was good last year, I still wouldn't pay him $10 million, just given I'd rather see the young kids play. We just spent a first-round pick on Noah Igbenogany. Nick Needham just had a really good rookie year. Let the young kids play. I don't see the merit in that.
That's awesome.
I agree.
Anything else you want to add, EM, before we let Dante out of here?
No, sir, man. I just appreciate you coming out, Dante. A lot of insightful information. I know I learned.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Hopefully the fan base was paying attention and paying attention to the details, and hopefully it was insightful for them as well. And we definitely look forward to having you on and definitely in the near future, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'd love to come back.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and taking especially time on a Friday night, Dante. And I'm with EM, man. You are at the top of the list. Anytime you want to come back on, brother.
Absolutely.
Love having you on, man.
Absolutely.
Very insightful,
Absolutely.
man. So thank you for taking the time to come out. And I love that we have someone else who watches as much film as you do, as a draft analyst like you are, but you're also a Dolphins fan. It's a beautiful thing, brother.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love it. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, Dante. You have a good night and a good weekend, brother.
Yep, you guys too.
Man.
Thanks, man. So,
man, I'm sorry, bro, about my man. I got it's like a tornado sirens going off, man. I got screens blowing off my windows and everything, bro. Huh?
It's the end of the world.
What's that?
It's the end of the world, and we're out here talking Dolphins, bro.
Bro, I'm seeing my power flicking on and off, bro. It's like, man, I got screens.
Bro, you look nervous.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
Looking over your shoulder.
I am, dude. Bro, listen. I don't get shook about many things in this world, but when them tornado sirens start going off, I get like, well, I shouldn't say that on air, but let's just say I act like I'm like a 3-year-old, bro. Really. So when it comes to tornadoes, I don't play around with tornadoes, bro. It's
one of those situations where Greeny can't help you, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Do you have
exactly, bro? So my bad. I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody out there in the comment section.
Do you have one of those cellars where you can walk outside and go underground?
Absolutely not. That's the thing, bro. I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere, man.
Bro, get under your table. Get under.
I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere, so no, absolutely not.
Hey,
you got screens blowing off and everything, bro. It's crazy.
Hey, just
crazy.
Hold on to Toto. Huh? Hold on to Toto because you might not be in Kansas anymore when that thing rips through, bro.
Yeah.
Follow the yellow when you land, bro.
Oh my God. Okay, man. You got jokes, bro. I'm dead serious, man.
So I actually got a couple jokes. One thing I wanted to show everyone before we get out of here, a couple things. Firstly, I wanted to show everyone, I don't know if everyone saw what Mike Gesicki did today on Twitter, but let's show the people because it was kind of amazing. So, guys, this is Mike Gesicki. This is Mike Gesicki throwing a football to himself and running through the garage and catching it. So check it out, guys. That's my tight end, bro.
Yeah, I saw that. That was highly impressive. Highly impressive.
And guys, the other thing I want to show you all is they are officially here. And you know your boy already jumped all over it. Spent a nice cool $500 on NFL Shop on Tua merchandise today. Guys, the throwbacks have arrived, guys. Go get your Tua throwback. They got the white and the aqua. Your boy kind of wild out with the Tua, and the Tua. You know what it is, guys. I told y'all if we drafted him, as soon as those jerseys hit the store, I was going to put my money where my mouth is. And I definitely, bro, $60 in duty and handling, bro, because it's got to cross the border. Craziness. So go get your Tua jerseys. You know, EM, it's going to be ridiculous to see where he stands in NFL rankings with jerseys because now the throwbacks are out. So, you know what I'm saying? By the way, Rhino, that orange, that was a T-shirt, so it's actually not a jersey. But, guys, we're going to get out of here. EM's going to go hide under a table just in case a tornado rolls through.
You are damn right. You are absolutely right, bro. I'm telling you, for real. It is crazy, man. I'm looking out the window right now. Crazy.
And we will be back on Monday night. I'll release the time on Twitter as usual. But guys, EM, anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Just appreciate everybody. Appreciate coming out and hopefully all that information that that we highlighted tonight. Hopefully it was insightful for the fan base. And again, it's greatly appreciated everybody coming out and fans up all day, every day, baby.
And guys,
y'all keep me in your prayer. Y'all keep me in your prayer. Say a prayer for me because it is getting ugly over here in Texas, bro. So
and EM, we got that. We got the edge evaluation show coming next week finally from you.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I'll definitely it's coming next week.
That's going to be on Monday or Wednesday, guys. We haven't figured out which one yet, but we're going to go over Kyle Van Noy, Emmanuel Ogba, Shaq Lawson, as well as the additions of Strobridge and Curtis Weaver. We're going to break down how they fit the scheme, what kind of assignments they're gonna be focused in on, what kind of assignments they're gonna have, what kind of looks we're gonna be able to throw other offenses with the players we've added, et cetera, et cetera. So you're gonna wanna tune in for that one because that's something that our boy EM has been working on for quite some time. And I just want to give a quick shout out. We have got a couple donations, and we actually got one donation to end our last stream, but we got it near the end of the stream, and I wasn't able to throw it out there. So, wow, it's our boy, Fake Spike 84 on our last stream. He said, good show, keep up the work, fins up, and he donated $10. And tonight, our boy, Fake Spike, one of the top mods on this channel, came through again. He dropped $20. He said, great show again, much love. So, Fake Spike, bro, we love you, man. You're out here. You're the absolute man, bro. You all are, like Rhino, George, Infinite Trauma, Damian D's. Like, we see all of y'all constantly pushing us and showing love. And, George, Rhino, Infinite Trauma. We were talking in the DMs over the past couple of nights. Good discussions. Shout out to my boy Rhino. Shout out to my boy Rhino with those ones.
Wow. Interesting.
Y'all already know what the deal is. Shout out to Last Bird 01. Shout out to Larry L. Shout out to Mike Pellegrino. Everyone who comes through, man. I haven't even probably said your name, Sharif. All y'all. We got nothing but love, man.
Absolutely. Yep.
Don't forget to press that like button. And if y'all want to donate, there's the link to donate. I didn't want to throw that up while we had our guest on. But, Mr. Miami, we always see you in here. Clemente, all of y'all, man. It's just nothing but love and appreciation. Guys, we already have over 550,000 minutes watched on YouTube, and we've only been doing this since March 19th, and April was when we really started picking up with traffic. So, man, we over half a million minutes viewed on YouTube, and it's only been a couple months. We're almost at about 800 subscribers. We're going to get to 1K, no problem, I'm sure. We got a lot of good things, man. We got a lot of stuff lined up for you guys for this off season, and also we're already scheduling out stuff we're going to be doing in season for you guys. So we hope you're liking what we're doing for the channel. In terms of these outlook shows, we still have the running back outlook show that we're going to bring to you, and we're also going to do a front seven outlook, and that's going to be handled by me and EM, mainly EM, because that is his specialty, the front seven. So, guys, you're gonna like what we have on deck for you for sure, and we can't wait to bring you along for the journey. So, fins up, y'all already know what it is. I hope all y'all stay happy, healthy, and safe, especially you, EM. You need it the most right now. So, guys, thank you so much for taking 2 hours out of your Friday night, right in the thick of prime time, to come hang out with you, man. It's nothing but love. We appreciate every single one of you, even the haters that. They're watching, they ain't saying anything, and they're just waiting to hit that dislike button. Kill them with kindness, bro. We see you. So keep watching, bro. We'll take the view count. You come over and watch, haters. We'll take the view count. But other than that, fins up, everyone. We love y'all.
Fins up, baby.
Have a good weekend, everyone.